Thank you for downloading Michael Sandel, the public philosopher. In this second debate, recorded at the London School of Economics, political philosopher Professor Michael Sandel asks, should a banker be paid more than a nurse?
Thank you. Hello and welcome to the LSE. My name is Michael Sandel, and I'm delighted to be here for the second in our series of debates on public philosophy. Our project, our civic experiment, is to take up some of the hard questions that are debated these days in public life and to think together about them. To think together about them with an eye to the fundamental principles, the big philosophical questions that underlie the arguments we have. Not because we'll necessarily agree on all of those principles, but because it may make for a better, richer, healthier democratic debate. Today, we take up a question about pay. What counts as fair pay? Take the example of bankers' pay. Huge awards and bonuses for bankers are hot news. At a time when job prospects are bleak for many, prices are rising, spending cuts being ordered across the state sector, billions of pounds in bonuses are still being paid to bankers. So contentious is this issue that the RBS chief executive, Stephen Hester, had to turn down his bonus of almost £1 million, a bonus to which he was legally entitled. And former RBS boss, Fred Goodwin, was stripped of his knighthood. Now, we haven't heard much about bonuses for nurses. So, a question about fairness. What is fair pay? Is it fair that bankers are paid more than nurses? Let's begin with a show of hands. How many of you here would say it's unfair for bankers to be paid a great deal more than nurses? And raise your hands, those of you who think it is fair for bankers to be paid a lot more than nurses. Well, for our audience on Radio 4, I can report that it's about split 50-50, but I noticed that a lot of people didn't raise their hands. So let's begin our discussion. Those of you who think big pay differences are unfair or unjustified, I need a brave student from the LSE to get us started. Yes?
I'm not a student from the LSE, but...
But you are brave.
Sort of. I think the most important thing about deciding how much somebody should be paid is how much they contribute to well-being. And inherently, income inequalities are not good for well-being. So I'll throw that in as the first argument against huge pay inequality.
Jonathan, you say contribution to well-being should be the basis of pay. So you're skeptical of pay differences because you doubt that they can be justified, at least substantial pay gaps, on the basis of who contributes most to well-being. Who else?
My name's Alice. I think if pay is a reward for hard work or effort, it's not true to say that bankers have worked harder. Nurses probably do longer hours, harder work, and it's probably luck that people have become bankers. It's related to social class. It's the fact that they've got into institutions like LSE, as opposed to nurses who tend to come from a different background, perhaps haven't had the same opportunities, but do work just as hard and do deserve just as good pay.
So nurses, Alice says, work just as hard as bankers. Maybe, Alice, do you think a bit harder?
Yeah, I would say probably. Well, I mean, my image of a banker is an overweight man behind a desk. My image of a nurse is an overworked woman who's got a family to feed, who goes to work every day and works a night shift, who's constantly, on her feet. Yeah, I would say that nurses probably do work harder.
And you not only think that nurses work harder than bankers, Alice, if I hear you, you also believe at the level of principle that fair pay should reflect effort, hard work.
Yeah.
And so by that logic, Alice, you would say maybe there's a case to be made for paying nurses more than bankers. Am I right?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
Okay, so we have two arguments against bankers making a lot more than nurses. Who now disagrees? Who thinks it is fair? At the back.
My name is Wes. I do believe that in the end of the day, if the market decides that bankers do create more material wealth for the society, they should be rewarded more.
So you disagree with Alice because you don't think that effort, or effort alone, should be the basis of pay.
Yes, I do believe creativity and intelligence is also important.
But if someone were very good at producing wealth and jobs for other people, who wasn't terribly intelligent, that wouldn't diminish their claim of desert to that money, would it?
No.
Can you think of someone in this category?
Football players, they are highly intelligent in terms of their football playing skills. They got game sense, right?
People pay a lot of money to go see them play. Wayne Rooney, for example. You seem to be straying now, Wes, from the standard of intelligence as an independent standard of desert to high pay. Do you know how much Wayne Rooney makes, the great footballer?
I don't know, no. I don't follow Man United, sorry.
If you figure it out, Wayne Rooney makes more for a single match than the most experienced nurse in Britain makes in a year. Now, Wes, do you think that's the way it should be?
Well, because all the football fans decided to pay Wayne Rooney so much money for him to play for Man United and to watch him play. So that's just an aggregate choice made by all those millions of people decided together. It's their choice to buy, right?
So it represents the aggregate choices made by football fans, by the market.
Yeah.
So we have a few different ways of thinking about justice and fair pay. One is effort, hard work. The other is contribution to social well-being. And the third, we've just heard about this from Wes, is the market, the aggregated choices of consumers, people willing to buy a ticket to see Wayne Rooney play. And underlying, Wes tells us, underlying the logic of the market as a way of defining fair pay is the idea that the people who create the most wealth deserve the highest pay. I'd like to hear from someone who disagrees with that argument.
I'm Kaylee. The biggest problem with what you're saying, Wes, is that it's not about if there's a pay difference and if that's fair, but if it's that big as we know it to be in society. It's not about if there's a pay difference. I don't think the discussion here is saying that everybody should make exactly the same money. It's more about why are the differences so huge, and is that fair?
And what would your answer be, Kaylee, to that question?
No, I don't think that's fair.
And why not?
Well, because I don't think anybody can work that much harder that you make in 2 hours what somebody else makes in an entire year. I don't understand why soccer players are idealized so incredibly.
And that's because you call him a soccer player rather than a footballer. Don't worry, Kaylee, I've only recently learned about that myself. All right, is there anyone else, thank you for that, is there anyone else who would like to address the market argument, the idea that the fair way to set pay is to let the free market operate, let the aggregate choices of individual consumers and people who offer their labor and their services decide who gets what. Is there anyone else who disagrees that a free market is the best way of defining fairness in pay?
Yeah, hi, I'm Harry. It seems to me that when you look really hard at a lot of those things, they seem in a sort of quite a fundamental way to be completely arbitrary. I mean, Wayne Rooney was not born with the brilliant or mediocre, depending on your view, footballing skills that he has. by any doing of his own. He was just born with that gift. And similarly, bankers may get to the position they are in society through any number of things like the education they have. So it seems a little unfair that income inequality should respond to these things in such a dramatic way.
And the reason, Harry, that you question whether income should be allocated according to contribution to GDP or creativity or intelligence or athletic talent, the reason you doubt that is that you think those abilities, those skills, are not our own doing.
Yes, so it seems unfair that certain people should be rewarded on the basis of that.
So the fact that Wayne Rooney is a great footballer, or used to be, that's not his doing, really, you're saying, Harry.
No, I mean, you can bring in the effort argument, but even that, to an extent, could be determined by your upbringing or genetics and things like that, to how much you're disposed to put in effort. So the more you kind of think about things, the more it seems as though it's just sort of the justice of the universe rather than how much effort they've put in and how much they deserve to be rewarded.
And when you speak about the justice of the universe, you mean luck, the great lottery of life.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And by the lottery of life, you mean that some people just happen to have the talents and skills that other people are willing to pay a lot of money for.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then how can the people who are lucky or blessed or who won the lottery, how can they claim to deserve the great bounty that a market society heaps upon them?
Yeah, I mean, there might be some pragmatic reason to have a certain level of inequality, but it seems unfair to have such a gross inequality when it is in response to that lottery, as you said.
All right, so Harry's introduced the idea of what he sees as the morally arbitrary results of market exchange, a moral arbitrariness that he sees as consisting in the fact that the skills and talents it takes to get ahead and to make a lot of money, for the most part, are not our own doing. So we shouldn't inhale too deeply when we exercise those talents. We shouldn't assume that we have some privileged claim on the fruits of their exercise, so we shouldn't consider that the income gaps that result need to be left in place morally. Who disagrees with that? Who has an answer to that?
Hello, I'm Celia. For me, I ascribe some kind of intrinsic value to the work that a nurse is doing versus what a banker might be doing. It seems to me that if I had to choose, say, behind a kind of veil of ignorance, if I had to choose, okay, how do I want to walk this journey? I do not know what may befall me on my journey, but if I had to choose between a banker and a nurse to walk that journey, I would certainly choose a nurse. Right. Because I'm just thinking there is some kind of intrinsic value, a moral value to the work that person is carrying out, which I value more than I do the work of a banker.
I see. Okay, yeah. Celia speaks about thinking about this behind the veil of ignorance, which is the phrase, the thought experiment of the philosopher John Rawls, who says the way to think about justice is to imagine we didn't know where in society we would wind up. We didn't know what skills we would turn out to have. What principles of justice would we design to govern society in the absence of that information about our personal status and life prospects? So Celia's applying that idea to say that from behind the veil of ignorance, she would choose to reward nurses more than bankers because she thinks their contribution is intrinsically more important. And while you're back there behind the veil of ignorance, Celia, where does Wayne Rooney figure? He doesn't. He's at the bottom?
Very much at the bottom.
I see. We're getting on to this question of whether fairness in pay should reflect and respond to the intrinsic importance of the contribution. That's different from the market argument. Markets don't pass judgment on the intrinsic importance of the activities. They only tell us who's willing to pay for what. And so Celia is saying that's why we can't let markets guide us, because some judgment about the value, the worth, the importance of the contribution should be made. Who disagrees with that idea, that just pay should respond to the intrinsic importance of the job? Yes.
Charles Owen, I'm a businessman. I disagree.
You're braver than these LSE students.
And the non-LSE students. I disagree with that, because actually, if we can extend nurse to doctor as well, and we had a free market, then actually I think you probably find that the nurses stroke doctors might actually get paid more than the bankers. Because if somebody has a life-threatening disease, they would probably be prepared to pay pretty much anything to actually get that resolved or sorted out. But I don't want to actually live in a completely free market for health. I'd rather live in a society where health is, basic health is seen as a natural right, and therefore everybody contributes into it, and therefore there is a level of health care provided for everybody, which is where I would go against the free market argument. Just
to take your example, Charles, of the nurse or the doctor, the medical practitioner, take a neurosurgeon, a highly skilled medical figure. Now, currently in the UK, what do you suppose a neurosurgeon makes? The most successful neurosurgeon?
Maybe several £100,000 a year.
And maybe more typically 200,000, something like that?
Yeah.
Now, that's quite a bit less than bankers. Do you think that's unfair?
Yes, that is unfair, because the level of pay to bankers, the levels that some of them are getting, i.e. in the multiple millions, do not reflect any type of risk. I think that people that actually get rewarded by very large amounts, i.e. the level that we're talking to bankers, should only be able to get that if they've risked something, either their own money, their own wealth, their property, something like that.
Now, Celia said she thinks pay differences should respond to the importance, the intrinsic worth of the contribution. Do you agree with that standard? And if you do, would you say that by that standard, neurosurgeons should make more than bankers?
I agree that that should be one of the factors in there, but not the only one. It then becomes very difficult because the banker can have a lot of positive impacts that aren't direct, in the same way that I suppose you could say that the same thing about a neuroscientist. So I don't know on that one. I don't know where it come down.
I'd like to hear from more defenders of the market as a way of defining fair pay. We've heard a number of objections to using markets to define fair pay. One argument says we should look to the intrinsic importance of the contribution, and markets don't tell us that. Another related objection says the skills and talents markets reward are a matter of good luck. They are not, for the most part, our own doing. Who would like to defend markets as instruments of distributive justice against those arguments? Yes.
My name's Michael. In terms of putting an intrinsic value on something, the market, I think, is the best way, because it is that sort of aggregation of what people are willing to pay for something. So when you put a value on the intrinsic worth of something, it's hard to define what that is.
It is hard to define.
So then when we get into that, we have to have someone like the government deciding, okay, now the doctor gets paid more. And so maybe not really on my opinion of what is right, what is just, but more as the market is the most efficient thing that we have to sort of allocate resources and get people what they want.
So Michael draws our attention to a related question. Michael suggests that if we don't like the distribution of pay that results from the operation of the market economy, we shouldn't quarrel with it directly. We shouldn't try to rejigger the pay that goes to people in different roles. Instead, we should accept that it's economically efficient, and we should set about redistributing income and wealth from those who get most to those who get less. So there is a connection, there does seem to be a connection between the debates we have about pay and the views people have about redistribution. There are other defenders of the market against. I especially want to hear a reply to Harry's argument that we can't regard the pay generated by markets as fair because it reflects moral arbitrariness, the fact that skills and talents are not our own doing, but a matter of good luck. Who disagrees with Harry about that and would like to reply?
Hi, Jonathan. I think we're missing out something that might be a remuneration in itself, and that's why people go into these professions. And a lot of nurses and doctors would say, the esteem of their colleagues, the ability to do good is actually a benefit accruing to them that is non-pecuniary. I'll give you an example. I know a surgeon who actually went off and was recruited to work at Goldman Sachs and become a banker. Did it for 5 years, made a lot of money, came back to medicine because he felt he was missing the research and the doing good, the patient-to-patient contact that he had. So I think we need to price in also these utility points that accrue to other professions that are not just financially based.
So, Jonathan, are you arguing in effect that the reason bankers should be paid so much money is that it's an unsatisfying job?
No. No, I'm saying that they might value certain things more or less than a health professional would. There are probably a lot of surgeons that had the technical expertise to be able to become bankers, but they chose to go into medicine because they valued more humanitarian or more direct patient contact, that sort of thing.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to Harry. Harry got us on to this point about whether the talents and skills that reap great rewards are doing, and we've heard replies that there is an element of choice in job, choice in professions. People take into account the intrinsic satisfaction of this or that job, how stressful the job may be, how demanding the hours. Harry, does that address the objection you had to letting markets define fair pay?
No, it doesn't. A lot of these points do have some value. I accept that some people might give up a highly paid job voluntarily to become a doctor because they feel that that's a worthy thing to do. But I don't think any of these get to the root of the problem or the root of the question, which is that you have these gross income differentials. We're not just talking about 2 or 3 times the difference. It's such a massive difference that it seems to just trump all of these things, and I just don't see that they can explain it.
Well, let's put the question to the audience as a whole. We'll call it Harry's question. To what extent do pay differences that we actually observe in society today, to what extent do they reflect luck? What skills you were born with, what talents, what parents you happen to have? Did you have good and nurturing parents who could send you to good schools? To what extent did these differences reflect luck, not our own doing? And to what extent did the pay differences we observe today reflect effort, drive, determination, choice? How many say mainly luck? And how many say mainly effort and other things that we can control? Well, for the Radio 4 audience, we have a divided house with, I would say, a narrow majority agreeing with Harry's principle, the luck principle, but a substantial minority saying that pay differences reflect factors that are under our own control. And here again, I have to report many abstainers who are still trying to decide what they think, which is all right. I want to hear from some of you who think that most of the pay differences we observe in the world are not a matter of luck, but a matter of effort, of striving, of hard work, of choice. Yes?
Hi, I'm Thomas. Well, I think it's obvious. We have the experience and evidence of many people who actually didn't have luck, who came from very poor backgrounds, from very poor families, from parents who had no university education, and they were able to build up fantastic empires and make a lot of money. At the same time, we have an experience of people who had all the luck in the world they needed, and they didn't make a big fortune because they just didn't put in the effort.
So apply your way of thinking, your principle, to the case of Steve Jobs, let's say.
Well, I mean, Steve Jobs, he got thrown out of his own company, right? He started from scratch, and then he built up Apple again. I mean, he wasn't at Stanford. He says that in that lecture he has at Stanford, that he was attending classes in Stanford. He had to ask for food, and from this drive he had and all this effort, he actually was able to build up an empire.
And therefore, what do you conclude about his moral claim to the enormous wealth that he created?
I'm just trying to make the point that luck is very good if you want to be successful, but it's not the only thing you need. You actually need to make the effort.
But I'm asking maybe a slightly different question to bring us back to the debate about moral desert. Would you say that Steve Jobs, in virtue of starting up this very successful company that gave people tools, new tools to work with, contributed creativity, enormous economic value, would you say that he therefore deserves the rewards that society heaps upon that kind of innovation?
I'm sure he deserves it more than a person who didn't do anything. That doesn't say anything about the responsibility he afterwards has towards the society. But yeah, I think he deserves it a lot more.
Others who want to reply to the question about luck. Yes.
Hello, I'm Zarif. I'm an international student, and I would think that if you consider the economy of the UK, especially, you're given a lot of financial aid and financial support if you want to go into university. So that does decide whether if you want to be a banker or not, because whether if you get into a good university and work hard or not, that eventually goes to decide. For me in particular, I would say that I'm from a relatively privileged background. So for me, it is luck. But for the overall majority of, especially the Western economies, I would say that I would say that there's a lot of possibilities and there are a lot of opportunities. So it is not.
Well, let me ask you a question. Tell me your name again.
Zarif.
It's true there are obstacles in all societies. There are obstacles to advancement, especially to those who are born into disadvantaged circumstances. And that provides an argument for creating a more genuine equality of opportunity, so that the accident of birth, how wealthy your parents happen to be, doesn't determine your life prospects. Suppose we imagined a society that achieved a good measure of equality of opportunity. Financial help and scholarships for those who came from poor backgrounds so that everyone had access to a good education. And a society where there were no obstacles to advancement for those who work hard and have the talent to get ahead. Imagine a society like that. Suppose we could achieve it. Would you say that in a society such as that, with genuine equality of opportunity to rise, then would you say that whatever the market allocates to various people offering their talents is fair?
Yes, that would be fair, in my opinion.
Now I want to ask Harry, what would be your answer to that question? Imagining a society where there is equality of opportunity, would it be fair, the results of the market economy, the wages and pay that people got?
Well, I think it's difficult to imagine a society that has perfect equality of opportunity where you have gross inequality of income, because inequality of income breeds inequality of opportunity, it seems to me. But also, I mean, it seems like the central point we've got to now is we're saying that it all depends on effort. So once we've got the equality of opportunity, it's down to how hard you try, how much you grab the opportunities that are given to you. But it seems to me that even how much effort we put in might be determined to an extent by circumstance. If I don't know, I'm not really sure, but if our parents perhaps spend ages with us as children, then we'll be more inclined to work hard and concentrate at things. There's loads of different factors that could influence how much we're disposed to apply ourselves to tasks, and I don't see why that's necessarily immune from a consideration of luck and circumstance.
So even the willingness and the ability to strive, to work hard, to expend effort, even that may be the result of factors not of our own doing, our good luck.
Yeah, it seems to me.
And so would you conclude from that, Harry, that even if we could achieve a society with perfect equality of opportunity, the opportunity to rise based on one's efforts and talents, you would not say that in such a society, whatever people wound up earning, was morally deserved? What we're discussing now is to imagine a perfect meritocracy, where there were no obstacles to achievement. Would a perfect meritocracy remove all the objections that you have and that some others have to big pay differences?
Well, I don't think it necessarily would, no, because of the point about effort also being determined by luck to some extent.
Okay, who would like to respond? Who disagrees with Harry about this? Imagining a perfect meritocracy. Yes.
My name is Lily, and I'm a research director. I happen to have grown up in a world which sort of looked as if it was trying to be something like a perfect meritocracy. I come originally from Yugoslavia. And I think it is very difficult, even when you have got a fantastic education system, which provides opportunity for a lot of people, where the universities open on the basis of the ability and the entrance exams that have nothing to do with where your parents come from. The distinctions start to appear. And in many ways, it is people who capture the choice. You know, if we have got back to the title, do bankers get paid more than nurses? Guess what? Do nurses have the access to the market? Do they control it? No, they don't. Do bankers have access to the market, and do they actually have the ability not just to control the market, but to influence the executive and the media? Oh, sure they do. So who gets paid more? Do I have to ask?
I think I know the answer that you're pointing us toward. Yes.
My name is Neil. I wanted to come back to the equal opportunity point. Even if you assume that all people had equal opportunity to every job, would it not still be the case that just that I'm born in a society which values a banker, the work of a banker more than that of a nurse, is still a matter of luck?
That even if we had perfectly equal opportunity, there would still be differential rewards, different pay for different jobs. And before we could call those different rewards just, we would have to, and a matter of desert, morally deserved, we would have to be able to say that the people earned what they got through hard effort and their own talents. But we would also have to say, tell me if I have your point right, what society happens to value and prize may be a matter of luck. the fact that this society happens to value football playing skills. That too is a matter of luck? Is that what you're suggesting?
I would say so. If I'd born maybe like 1,000 years ago instead of today, I mean, the society would have valued certain things completely different than nowadays. And I mean, it's still a matter of luck, isn't it?
So Wayne Rooney is lucky, even if you put aside the question about whether he really developed his own talents on his own through effort and practice. You say it's also his good fortune, not his doing, that he lives now rather than hundreds of years ago, now when we happen to value being very good at what? Kicking a pigskin around a field for a certain period of time. Yes? Whereas if he, with those considerable skills, had lived 500 years ago, he wouldn't have made much with them. So, Harry, that fits your point, doesn't it, about luck? There are two dimensions of luck that can be brought to bear in the debate about meritocracy, it seems. One of them is whether we deserve the talents and skills that we use to get ahead. And another is the question of whether we deserve to live in a society that happens to prize the talents and skills we have in abundance. We haven't resolved our question. Should a banker be paid more than a nurse? But in exploring that question, I think we've identified some of the main lines of argument, some of the competing philosophical principles that underlie the debates we have about pay, what's fair and what's unfair. Some say what counts as fair pay is pay that responds to the importance of the contribution a person makes. Other people say it depends on effort, how hard one works. That's the basis of moral desert. And others say, no, it's really markets that should define fair pay, because who are we, who is any of us, to decide what's intrinsically more important than something else? Markets have the advantage, or the apparent advantage, of being non-judgmental in this way. Simply, they register how people's various talents and skills are valued by other people. They don't pass judgment on what's intrinsically the higher calling or job or pursuit. And furthermore, those who defend markets as defining fair pay say they serve a practical advantage. They enable us collectively to get what we want. That's the argument for markets playing a role in defining fairness. But then we've heard an objection, two objections really, to the market-based idea of fairness. One of them says people start out in life from different places. Some people are born into poor families, others into affluent ones. Some people have very limited educational opportunities. Others go to the best schools. So how can we say that we live in a truly meritocratic society? That's one objection. But then we tested that objection by imagining a society that actually succeeded in achieving true equality of opportunity, a perfect meritocracy, if we can imagine it. And to get at the issue of principle, we asked, would the pay that resulted from such a society be fair? Some people said yes. Others said no, on two grounds. One is that the talents and skills are not our doing. They may involve a lot of good luck. The other objection to a perfect meritocracy is the fact that our society prizes the talents and skills we have in abundance. You or me or the banker or Wayne Rooney is not our own doing, but a matter of good luck. And so we've at least identified some of the principles that underlie the debates we have every day, not only about bankers' bonuses, but about what fairness means, and what fairness means in rewarding the contributions people make with their different skills and talents in a market society. So I think we can conclude provisionally, at least, in this experiment in public philosophy, that there are big principles, competing principles, underlying the arguments we have these days about bankers' bonuses and who should earn what. I want to thank everyone here at the LSE for having led us to this discovery of the competing principles of fairness underlying the debate about pay. Next week, we'll take up a different question of public philosophy, when I'll be asking, should we bribe people to be healthy? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for downloading Michael Sandel, the Public Philosopher. If you enjoyed this programme, you can hear more from Michael Sandel by downloading his 2009 BBC Reith Lectures via the Reith Lectures archive. To find out more, and for our full terms and conditions, visit the Radio 4 website.